Welcome back to Two Hearts, where stories are weaved to explore the beauty of diverse cultures and the depths of human connection. A chaotic arrival overseas seems to set the tone for a 2-week vacation and a temporary international relocation. Until that is, presuppositions are challenged and unlikely connections are forged from intrigues embedded in the past and desires emerging for the future. Follow Mona and Francisco as their feelings evolve from an immediate spark of attraction into exploration around the complexities of love across cultures and geographical boundaries. Please enjoy this first installment of Bridges Over the Tagus. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so that more members of our community can continue to find content like this.
Mona Renfro's journey to the land of discoveries had begun with a flurry of chaos and aggravation. Thanks to an unreasonably short connection window after touching down in Paris from the first leg of her flight, her exhibited sprinter speed through Charles de Gaulle that would have gotten her an invitation to the Olympic trials in Eugene did little to advance or accelerate her efforts. Arriving at her departure gate with no time to spare, a sheen of perspiration dancing across her brow and upper lip, and her carry-on pitching to a sudden stop, Mona almost burst into tears as she watched from the tempered glass windows as the flight that she was supposed to be on ascended into the crystalline blue sky. Although the next available flight would require a 5-hour layover first, the silver lining had been that a kind gate agent who witnessed her cardio session across the terminal and openly acknowledged that that particular connection should have never been offered by the airline in the first place, extended grace and upgraded the flustered woman to business class for her troubles. The few hours of comfort and peace that Mona had achieved as she took advantage of the noise-canceling headphones, plush Sherpa-lined blanket, and top-shelf libations was short-lived once she touched down, though. Despite being a TSA pre-check and global entry member, the immigration lines were obscenely long, and her entry agent was especially curious, if not invasive, about the reason for and duration of her D8 visa. Taking the entire ordeal on the chin, Mona patiently answered what questions she could in her English-Portuguese fusion and provided the necessary documentation for the rest. After clearing that hurdle, baggage claim had been the final boss that would not be denied. It was common knowledge that the bags on an international flight took considerable time to be offloaded from an airplane, but fate had obviously decided that someone should hold her beer. During that time, Mona had been trying to get a message to her car hire about the delay, but the eSIM that she'd purchased online before her trip was doing absolutely nothing but taking up precious memory space on her cell phone. An hour and a half later, though, flustered, Mona moved through the bustling Lisbon airport, her mind a whirlwind of jet lag and anxiety. The airport signs, a blur of Portuguese, did little to provide her comfort as she was unable to translate at the pace of the throng sweeping her along the terminal. Finally reaching the pickup section outside the arrivals gate, Mona's gaze swept intently over each handheld display, placard, and name board, but none read her surname. Unfortunately, attempting to call the car service again from her cell phone had resulted in the same failed outcome. So, left without a lifeline to the world outside the airport, Mona was forced to switch to her international plan, the hefty roaming charges a small price to pay for the comfort of familiar connectivity. One would have thought that at that point, Mona's circumstances would have turned a corner. Instead, after a brief hold and a search of her reservation number, she'd been told by the customer service agent that despite the unfortunate airline delay, her reservation only afforded her an hour courtesy wait time before the driver considered the customer a no-show and left. To add insult to non-refunded injury, the language barrier made it nearly impossible for Mona to accurately explain the baggage delay and SIM card issues she faced. After angrily inquiring if the company intended to leave her stranded in a country she had never been to before, the agent sensed the exasperation in her voice and politely suggested that she download the Bolt app. Surprisingly more economical than the popular rideshare options back home, Mona found several drivers awaiting new fares in the vehicle depot just outside the airport's arrivals parking garage. Comparing the image of the car, license plate, and Javier, the pickup driver indicated on her app, to the young, curly-haired man climbing from a Prius to grab her bags, Mona shuffled in and gave the man the name of her hotel. Thankfully, upon arriving to her home away from home for the next 2 weeks, Mona had been quickly and efficiently escorted to her beautiful suite overlooking the Tagus River promenade. Although exhausted from her many hours of travel, Mona unpacked her luggage and took a long hot shower before drawing back her bed linens to take a well-deserved nap. Startled awake by the ringing hotel room phone, Mona looked around in confusion before reaching over to answer the device. "Hola, señorita Renfro. This is Inez at the front desk with your 6 a.m. wake-up call," the chipper voice declared over the line. "Obrigado," Mona mumbled and hung up. Stretching deeply, Mona sat up in bed and attempted again to gain her bearings. She'd arrived in Lisbon mid-afternoon the day before and had only intended to take a short nap before grabbing something to eat and taking a cursory self-guided tour around the city to get familiar with her surroundings. Her body, however, had had other plans. Rising from the comfortable bed, Mona opened the drapes to find an exquisite view of the hotel's beautifully manicured subtropical gardens, with the popular waterway in the distance. Although she had to get a move on today, she couldn't wait to come back here and capture this view every other morning over coffee and her laptop. Today, however, she was going on a guided tour of the city that was slated to last all day. The bus was scheduled to pick her up in front of her hotel by 8 a.m., so she needed to get ready and then grab breakfast. Showering, dressing, and tousling out her silk-pressed hair, Mona made quick work of her morning primping before heading downstairs to one of the 2 on-site restaurants. Avoiding the pastries, since one leg of the tour was slated for pastels de Belém, she instead opted for the healthier options of oatmeal and fresh fruit. Rounding out the healthy meal with a bold espresso, Mona grabbed a water bottle from the buffet and headed to the front of the hotel. Although she was relaxed and in vacation mode, Mona watched as the city hummed all around her with activity, coming alive with early morning joggers, mothers pushing their young children in strollers, and people shuffling off to work. After 8 o'clock came and went, Mona stepped through the glass lobby doors and down the front stairway of the hotel. Looking up and down the busy street, she saw no evidence of a bus on the way or one having passed by. After waiting a few more minutes, she decided to make a quick circle of the block just to ensure the bus hadn't been waiting on one of the adjacent side streets. Walking along the vibrant boulevards of Lisbon, the city's charm was everywhere she looked. The many statues, azure tiles, and cobblestone streets were stunning. Although she hadn't meant to go far, Mona was fascinated by the history and modernity all around her, encapsulated in the city's architecture and infrastructure. Before long, she stopped at an unfamiliar alleyway. Immediately, she looked around in confusion and panic. She attempted to retrace her steps, but became turned around in a labyrinth she couldn't navigate. Just as she was about to reach for her phone to call her hotel, a tall, dark-haired man in a white polo shirt and chinos walked up to her. "Precisa de ayuda?" he asked, his voice as smooth as the river in the distance.
Mona blinked, her confusion evident. "I'm sorry, I only understand a little Portuguese." The man's eyes sparkled with amusement. "Ah, you're American. I should have guessed. I just asked if you needed any help," he smiled. Although Mona had just been disoriented and frightened, she was immediately struck by the man's slick words. What did he mean by that presumptuous statement? She knew she should have ignored the comment and made her way back to the hotel, but she couldn't help herself. "Why should you have guessed?" she asked with a frown. The man looked at her, momentarily confused before nodding, seeming to understand. "Only that you are beautiful. You did not appear to be from Lisboa, and when you spoke just now, you confirmed it." "Oh," Mona said, taken aback by the man's directness. "Now, as for the other matter of assistance, are you Mona Renfro?" Mona gasped in surprise before responding. "Who are you?" "I'm Francisco Alves, from Saudade Journeys. Welcome to Lisbon." "But I was looking for a bus." Mona looked at Francisco skeptically. "Yes, we normally sell out this tour in the summer months, but this late in the season it is, how you say, hit and miss. Today, it seems that you were the only one to book, so we will be taking our tour sedan," Francisco said. How did you know where to find me? Mona's questions continued. She was a woman traveling alone in a foreign country. She couldn't be too careful. I was not sure at first, but when I noticed you looking around, it dawned on me that you might be looking for the tour bus. By the time I got out of the car, you had already walked away, Francisco explained in his accented English. So where is this car? Mona asked, her arms folded across her chest. Just this way. Please follow me so we may get your tour underway, he replied. Francisco, with his enchanting smile and effortless charm, held his arm out to escort her. Mona, despite her initial reservations, accepted. The likelihood that a kidnapper who already knew her name had faked an early morning excursion just to abduct her was quite low. When they'd walked the short distance back to the front of the hotel, Francisco pointed to the black car at the curb, with the tour company decal emblazoned on the car door that she had completely missed. "Shall we go?" he asked. "Sim, por favor," she offered up in Portuguese, and he smiled. As Francisco and Mona settled into the comfortable sedan, the city of Lisbon began to unfold before them like a lively tapestry. Francisco, with his smooth Portuguese accent, started their tour with a bit of small talk. "So, Mona, where are you from?" Mona, still a bit flustered from her morning, replied, "You've already established that I am American, but I am from a city called Charlotte in the U.S. state of North Carolina." "And what brings you to Lisbon?" he asked, as his eyes connected with hers through the rearview mirror. "I am here for a few months on a remote assignment for my job, but I'm enjoying a 2-week vacation first. I've always wanted to visit Lisbon. The history and the culture is all so fascinating." Francisco nodded, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. Indeed, Lisbon is a city of many stories. We'll start our journey with a visit to the Belém Tower. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site and a symbol of the Age of Discoveries. As they drove through the city, Francisco pointed out various landmarks. Over there, you can see the Geronimo's Monastery. It's another UNESCO site, known for its Manuelan architecture. And of course, no visit to Lisbon would be complete without trying the famous pastéis de Belém. Mona's eyes widened with delight. "I deliberately avoided them this morning at breakfast so I wouldn't spoil my appetite. I can't wait to try them." That got a hearty chuckle out of Francisco. Upon reaching the Belém Tower, Francisco led Mona through the narrow streets, explaining the tower's role in Portugal's maritime history. This tower was a key part of Lisbon's defense system. It's also where ships would depart on their voyages of discovery. Mona, captivated by the tower's grandeur, couldn't help but ask, "What about the azulejos? I've seen so many of those beautiful tiles everywhere." Francisco smiled. "Ah, the azulejos. They're a quintessential part of Portuguese culture. We'll visit the National Tile Museum later, where you can learn all about their history and significance." Their next stop was the Geronimo's Monastery, where Francisco guided Mona through the intricate details of the monastery's architecture. This place is a masterpiece of Manuelan style. Look at the intricate carvings and the use of maritime elements in the design. Mona marveled at the monastery's beauty, feeling a deep sense of awe. "It's incredible. I can almost feel the history here." After the monastery, they headed to the National Tile Museum, where Francisco explained the evolution of the azulejos. These tiles have been a part of Portuguese life for centuries. They tell stories, decorate homes, and even serve practical purposes. Mona was fascinated by the display, especially by the older, more intricate tiles. "I never knew tiles could be so beautiful and meaningful." "I am very glad you are enjoying learning about Portugal," Francisco smiled. "Every place we visited has been amazing, but it's been your knowledge, descriptions, and overall engagement that have made this experience so enjoyable for me." "How do you know so much?" Mona asked from in awe. "Before I started Saudade Journeys full-time, I was an educator at the university level." "Can you guess the field of study?" he asked with a grin.
Portuguese history,
she guessed humorously. Beautiful and intelligent, he said as he escorted a blushing Mona back to his car. Their final stop was the famous Pastéis de Belém. As they sat down to enjoy the delicious pastries, Francisco shared a bit more about Lisbon's culinary scene. Lisbon is a food lover's paradise. From fresh seafood to traditional dishes, there's always something new to try. Mona savored the pastel, her taste buds dancing with delight. This is incredible. Thank you for showing me all these wonderful places. As the day drew to a close, Francisco drove them back to the hotel. It's been a pleasure, Mona. I hope you enjoyed your tour. Mona smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. I did. Thank you for making my first day in Lisbon so special, and for finding me when I was lost. Francisco chuckled. It was my pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your stay, and feel free to reach out if you need anything else. Actually, Francisco, I feel like there is so much more to see, and we've just experienced the tip of the iceberg. If the season has slowed like you said, then maybe, if you aren't too busy, you'd be willing to be my personal tour guide for the rest of my vacation? She requested. What else would you be interested in seeing? Francisco asked, intrigued by her proposal. Anything. Everything, whatever you think would enrich my experience here, she offered excitedly. I'm sure I could come up with some daily itineraries for you, he confirmed. Okay, great. Once you do, please send me the invoice. Oh my gosh, Francisco, this is so exciting, Mona squeaked. Un prazer. It is my pleasure, Mona, Francisco said kindly. As Mona stepped out of the car, she turned back to Francisco. Obrigado, Francisco. I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow, he repeated with a smile and drove off into the Lisbon night. Mona returned to her hotel room, her heart full of new memories and experiences. She couldn't help but feel grateful for the unexpected turn of events that had led her to Francisco and this incredible day. As she showered and then settled into bed, she knew that her adventures in Lisbon were just beginning, and she looked forward to exploring more of the city's wonders with a newfound appreciation and excitement. Those first few weeks in Lisbon were a whirlwind of confusion and humor for Mona. Francisco, true to his word, acted as her private tour guide, showing her the city's popular attractions and hidden gems. However, their language barrier often led to comedic misunderstandings. Mona's attempts at Portuguese were met with Francisco's playful corrections, and his rapid-fire Portuguese sometimes left her bewildered. Despite the challenges, Mona found herself drawn to Francisco's infectious energy and warmth. His patience and willingness to help her navigate the cultural nuances of Lisbon were endearing. On a beautiful morning when their daily tour found them sitting out at the South Fountain of Rocio, Francisco quietly read a book, while Mona spent an hour taking pictures of the architecture and the overall aesthetic. When she returned to the bench he was seated on, he looked up at her, his expression unreadable. "What?" she asked as she sat next to him. "Do you know Nicholas Sparks?" he asked as he laid down the book in his hands. Mona frowned in confusion, as if trying to place the person he had just mentioned to her. "I mean, his writings," Francisco clarified after seeing the baffled look on her face. "I can't say that I do," she said, looking down at the book between them. It was his turn to frown. "May I read you something?" he asked, and she nodded. Picking up the worn paperback from the bench, he flipped to a well-creased, dog-eared page and proceeded to read it in his heavily accented English. The passage transported Francisco to a realm where the Outer Banks stood as a testament to nature's untamed beauty and mysterious allure. The landscape was painted with the vibrant hues of sawgrass, its delicate blades dancing across the undulating dunes, creating a tapestry of wild, untamed elegance. This was a place where the earth and the sea had once been one, before the relentless march of the last ice age carved out the Pamluco Sound, leaving a legacy of isolation and wonder. The islands, once a part of the mainland, now stood as sentinels, their shores kissed by the relentless tide. Until the mid-20th century, they were a realm of their own, accessible only by the intrepid few who dared to drive along the beach, their paths etched in the sand as tire tracks that spoke of adventure and resilience. As Francisco delved deeper into the excerpt, Mona could almost feel the sea breeze on her skin, taste the salt in the air, and hear the distant call of gulls echoing across the vast expanse of the Outer Banks. It was a place where the past and the present collided, where the land and the sea danced in an eternal embrace, and where the spirit of adventure was as much a part of the landscape as the sand and the sea. I know where all those places are, Mona squinted with awareness and a hint of confusion. The way Sparks describes North Carolina has made me want to visit the U.S. to see such beauty for myself. His words are so poetic, yes? Francisco asked as he put the book down again and looked to Mona for a response. Wait, nights in Rodante? She asked with sudden recognition. You know it then? He asked excitedly. I do, and the notebook too, Mona realized humorously. What is funny? Have you ever seen the movies? She questioned. Ah, you have not read his books, even though they are set in your home state? He wondered. No, but perhaps I can make the time, she trailed off as their eyes met. And the movies, perhaps we can make the time. Yes, perhaps.
From that moment on, Mona began to look forward to their daily meetings, her heart fluttering whenever she saw his sedan round the corner. As their everyday explorations evolved into memorable quality time spent between the two of them, Mona and Francisco's bond gradually deepened. They spent hours exploring the city, their conversations a mix of broken English and Portuguese. Mona's curiosity about Francisco's life led to intimate conversations, and Francisco's fascination with Mona's American culture led to shared stories and laughter. Picking her up at a god-awful time the next morning, Mona's greeting was less than pleasant as she ambled sleepily into Francisco's car. She had no idea what the day held, only that they needed to be up well before dawn. She should dress in sporty layers, tennis shoes, and bring along a backpack and a refillable water bottle with her. The moment she saw Humberto Delgado International Airport come into view, Mona had bombarded Francisco with questions. As he parked his car in the day lot and escorted her into the terminal, her inquiries ranged from excitement to sheer terror. How do I know this isn't an attempt to traffic me into a... Mona, I am an adjunct professor turned travel tourism entrepreneur. You have all my contact information, a copy of my business licensure, as well as my surety bond record, all volunteered of my own volition, might I add. He shook his head exasperatedly. I know, but can you blame me for being wary? I mean, I still don't know where we are going, she countered. I can understand your apprehension, and I am glad for your vigilance, but I would never put you at risk. This is no more than any other day excursion that you've asked me to arrange per our contract, Francisco responded professionally. I know, but why the airport? Where could we possibly be going? She whined. Tell you what, I will give you one thing if you give me one thing, he said, pulling his wallet from the utility pocket of his pants and handing over his driver's license. Look it over, take a picture of it and send it to your mother, your boyfriend, or your best friend back home. That way, if you don't end up where you are supposed to be, they can come find me. Mona had wanted to laugh, but gave Francisco the stink eye instead. She knew what he was trying to do, both by neutralizing her fear with his identification and by slyly referencing her non-existent boyfriend. But instead of calling attention to that reach, she took in the chiseled and handsome face, lazy smile, and piercing hazel eyes of the man grinning at her from the ID card before snapping a picture of the credential and then him with her phone. Happy? He laughed at the sudden and unexpected flash to the face. Yes, very, she laughed back. Now what do I have to give you? Your trust. Can you do that? He asked, his voice no longer playful but stern. Yes, she whispered. Good, let's go.
The non-stop flight from Lisbon to Funchal got them to the beautiful Portuguese island just as the sun rose. Instead of coordinating a bus tour that would not begin until mid-morning, Francisco had reserved a car to rent for the day's adventure. Making quick work of the rental contract and payment, he whisked Mona to their sleek vehicle and headed out for the start of their day. "We can pick up breakfast on the way, but I'd like to get moving so that we beat the crowds," Francisco offered. "Whatever you think is best. I trust you," Mona teased. The drive from Funchal to Pico de Arriero unfolded like a tapestry of nature's most breathtaking creations. As they left the bustling city behind, the road began to climb, each twist and turn revealing a new panorama that stole Mona's breath away. As Francisco expertly steered the sporty vehicle, the asphalt snaked through lush valleys where the vibrant green of the vegetation contrasted sharply with the deep blue of the Atlantic Ocean in the distance below. The higher they went, the narrower the winding road became. The twisty path before them hugged the contours of the mountain, offering glimpses of terraced fields and quaint villages nestled in the folds of the terrain. Mona's jaw hung slack for the majority of the ride, and Francisco had to remind himself that his focus needed to remain on the sudden hairpin turns and steep elevation before him. As they approached Pico de Arriero, the road leveled out slightly, and they were greeted by a panoramic view offering a 360-degree vista of the island. "Francisco, I cannot believe what I'm seeing," Mona exclaimed as he parked in a gravel lot just off the observatory that was nestled atop the rocky peak. "Surprise, Mona," he grinned as he reached out his hand and she accepted it willingly. Deciding to hike the majestic trail instead of taking in the static views from the observation deck, the pair began their ascent amidst a serene atmosphere of gentle rushing winds and the quiet huffs of their own breaths. For hours, they navigated rocky, uneven paths, steep inclines with loose gravel underfoot, tunnels carved through mountainous corridors, and sheer drop-offs before reaching the Pico Ruvo summit. "What do you think?" Francisco huffed as he leaned forward with his hands planted on his thighs to catch his breath. "This might be the most beautiful and rewarding experience I've ever had," Mona noted, with her hands clasped behind her head, also working to catch her breath. "I agree," he said softly, as he watched her spin around in awe, taking in the raw and untamed beauty of the enveloping clouds, rugged peaks, and volcanic terrain. Mindful that they still had to make their returning descent, Francisco and Mona remained atop the world only a little while longer. Taking a few photos of one another and then a selfie together for the gram, they started on their long trek back. Although they both had been exhausted after arriving back in Lisbon later that afternoon, neither had wanted the day to end. Deciding to shower and take a short late-day nap, Mona agreed to meet Francisco later that evening for dinner. As promised, she'd been ready and waiting for him in her hotel lobby when he'd arrived promptly at 8 p.m. After a long day of climbing and cardio, they discovered that their appetites were very much present and accounted for. Enjoying a dinner of flavorful seafood and zesty wine, the pair dined to their heart's content as they shared more about their lives with one another. They later found themselves rounding out the day's adventures on a secluded terrace above a popular lounge overlooking the Tagus. The sunset painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, casting a romantic glow over the city. Francisco, his voice soft, stood with Mona at the terrace railing as he began to sing a traditional fado song, his eyes studying her face intently. Mona's heart raced as she listened to his melodious voice. The tension between them was palpable, a mix of yearning and restraint. Francisco's hand reached out, his fingers brushing against hers. Mona's breath hitched, her body leaning into his touch, his gaze never leaving hers. "Francisco," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Francisco's eyes darkened with desire, but he pulled back, a sad smile on his lips. "We shouldn't, Mona. You're here for a short time, and I can't afford to get hurt again." Again. Mona wasn't privy to his previous pain, but her heart ached at his words nonetheless. The reality of their situation was a harsh reminder of the barriers between them. The 2-week immersion into all things Portugal had seemed to fly by for Mona.
Granted, she would still be residing in Lisbon for several more months after her vacation. She was just no longer privy to her daily interactions with Francisco. After their near kiss on the terrace, Mona could feel him pulling away from her. What was disheartening was the fact that while he had never been inappropriate with her during their time together, she had gotten the sense that up to that point, he'd been enjoying her company just as much as she had grown to enjoy his. Now, unfortunately, she could no longer reach him behind the formal walls he'd erected between them. The next few days were a torment for Mona. Although she'd successfully checked out of her hotel and into the long-stay rental flat in Chiado that would be her new home for the next several months, Francisco's sudden distance was a stark contrast to their happy moments and previous closeness. She missed his laughter, his touch at the small of her back as he guided her this way and that throughout the capital, and the way his eyes lit up when he saw her. The city, once vibrant and full of life, now felt empty and cold. Mona tried to distract herself with work, but her mind always seemed to return to Francisco. She found herself wandering the streets, hoping to catch a glimpse of him. One afternoon, as she took a lunch reprieve from her busy workday, she left her flat to get some fresh air. Though not intending to, she allowed her feet to take navigational direction from her heart. Walking past the Saudade Journeys office, she saw him inside, seemingly discussing tour rates with a group of customers. Their eyes locked onto one another and held before he broke the connection and looked away. The bruise to her heart was instant. Mona, her heart heavy with longing, decided to confront Francisco. She couldn't bear the thought of leaving Lisbon without understanding why he had pulled away. Summoning her courage, she waited patiently for his customers to leave before she walked into the sleek and modern travel tourism office, her steps echoing in the quiet space. Francisco looked up as she entered, his expression a mix of guilt and apprehension. "Mona," he said softly, "what are you doing here?" Mona took a deep breath, her voice steady despite the turmoil within her. "I need to know why you're pulling away from me, Francisco. I thought we had something special." Francisco ran a hand through his hair, his eyes filled with a mix of pain and resignation. "Mona, you're an amazing woman, and these past weeks with you have been the best of my life. But I can't let myself fall for you." Mona's heart sank, but she pressed on. "Why not? Because I'm leaving? Because I'm not staying in Lisbon?" Francisco shook his head, his voice barely a whisper. "It's not just that. I've been hurt before, Mona. I was engaged once, to a woman who promised me the world. But she left, just like that, for a better opportunity elsewhere. She chose her career over us, and it destroyed me." Mona's eyes widened in understanding. "I'm so sorry, Francisco. I had no idea." Francisco looked at her, his eyes filled with a profound sadness. "I can't go through that again. I can't let myself fall in love with someone who will inevitably leave. It's too painful." Mona reached out, her hand cupping his cheek. "Francisco, I care about you deeply, and I know that you care about me. But I can't change the fact that I have a life back home. I have a job, a family, responsibilities." Francisco closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. "I know, Mona, and I respect that, but it doesn't make it any easier." Mona's heart ached for him, for the pain he had endured and the fear that held him back. She leaned in, her lips gently brushing against his in a soft, tender kiss. Francisco responded, his arms wrapping around her, pulling her close. When they finally pulled away, both were breathless, their hearts racing. Francisco looked into Mona's eyes, a mix of longing and regret in his gaze. "Mona, I wish things to be different. I wish I could be the man you deserve, but I can't." Mona smiled sadly, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "You are the man I deserve, Francisco, and I understand. I understand your pain, and I understand your fear. But I also understand the connection we share and the affection that has blossomed between us." Francisco's expression softened, his eyes stinging with unshed tears. "It's a crazy thing for me to say so soon, but I love you, Mona, more than I can express.
Still, I can't be the one to hold you back from your life, from your dreams. Mona kissed him again, a promise in her touch. I don't make the rules, Francisco, but I love you too. I don't know how this happened, but here we are. Unfortunately, I can't stay here forever, and you can't leave Lisbon. So we make the most of the time we have, and we cherish every moment. Francisco nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. Together then, for as long as we can. Mona took his hand, her voice filled with determination. Together, Francisco. As they left the office, hand in hand, the city of Lisbon seemed to shine a little brighter, the future a little less daunting. They had each other, for now, and that was enough. The rest would unfold as it was meant to, one beautiful, bittersweet moment at a time. The vibrant streets seemed to acknowledge this new version of the couple and embrace them, their colors more vivid, their sounds more melodic. They walked hand in hand, their fingers entwined, a silent promise of the love they shared. The cobblestone streets beneath their feet echoed with the history of their connection, each step a testament to their journey. Francisco led Mona to a secluded courtyard, hidden away from the bustling city. The courtyard was a secret garden, lush with greenery and filled with the sweet scent of jasmine. A fountain bubbled softly in the center, its water shimmering in the dappled sunlight filtering through the overhead canopy. Mona looked around in awe, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's beautiful, Francisco. How did you find this place?" Francisco smiled, his eyes reflecting the dance of light and shadow. "It's one of my favorite spots in the city, a place where I come to think, to dream, to escape." Mona turned to him, her voice soft and filled with emotion. "And now you share it with me." Francisco reached out, his fingers gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I share everything with you, Mona, my heart, my soul, my dreams. You are becoming my everything." Mona's heart swelled with love, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "And you are becoming mine, Francisco." He leaned in then, his lips meeting hers in a passionate kiss, a kiss that spoke of love, of longing, of a future uncertain but cherished. Mona responded with equal fervor, her arms wrapping around his neck, pulling him closer. As they eventually broke apart, breathless and flushed, Francisco led Mona deeper into the hideaway, to a bench nestled beneath an ancient olive tree. They sat, their shoulders touching, their hands still entwined. Francisco began to speak, his voice a low, intimate murmur. "Mona, I want to make the most of every moment we have together. I want to show you Lisbon, not just the tourist spots, but the places off the beaten path that make this city truly special. I want to share my world with you." Mona leaned her head on his shoulder, her voice filled with contentment. "And I want to explore every inch of this beautiful city with you, Cisco," she said. "Careful, Mona."
Stopping suddenly, Mona looked up at him with confused doe eyes. "Saying my name like that could be dangerous for you," he growled low at the use of the decidedly American pet name that no one had ever implemented before. "I want to learn about your culture, your history, and your people. I want to understand you in a way that no one else ever has. Cisco." Francisco kissed her sassy mouth, his arms tightening around her. "Then that's what we'll do. We'll explore, we'll love, and you'll learn," he finished boldly. Over the following weeks, Mona and Francisco embarked on a journey of discovery, of the city and of each other. They visited the quaint bookstores of Chiado, where Francisco introduced Mona to the works of Portuguese poets and authors. They strolled through the bustling markets of Alfama, where the air was filled with the aroma of fresh produce and the sound of lively banter. They explored the winding streets of Bairro Alto, where the nightlife was as vibrant as the day, and the music was as much a part of the city as the cobblestones beneath their feet. In the quiet moments, they shared stories of their pasts, their hopes, and their fears. Francisco spoke of his childhood, of growing up in the heart of Lisbon, of the dreams he had once held and the ones he still cherished. Mona shared her own journey, of her life in Charlotte, of her career, and of the void in her heart that only Francisco could fill. One evening, as they sat on the patio of a cozy restaurant, the city lights twinkling below, Francisco reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Mona's eyes widened in surprise as he took her hand, his voice filled with emotion. "Mona, these past weeks with you have been the happiest of my life. You have shown me what it means to love, to trust, to hope. I know that our future is uncertain, that you have a life waiting for you back home. But I also know that I can't let you go without telling you how deeply I care for you. Will you wear this as a symbol of our love, of the promise we make to each other today?" Mona's heart raced as she opened the box, revealing a delicate silver necklace with a pendant shaped like a bridge, a nod to the Tagus that had brought them together. Tears filled her eyes as she looked up at Francisco, her voice choked with emotion. "Francisco, it's beautiful. I will wear it always, as a reminder of you, of us, of the love we share. Thank you." Francisco carefully placed the delicate jewelry around her neck, his fingers lingering on her skin. He leaned in, his lips capturing hers in a kiss that spoke of promises and forever. On Mona's last day in Lisbon, as she stood at the airport, her heart heavy with sorrow, Francisco took her hands in his eyes filled with love and resolve. "Mona, I know that you have to go, that your life is waiting for you back home. But I also know that our love is strong enough to withstand the distance, the time, the uncertainty. I will wait for you, always. And when you're ready, I will be here with open arms." Mona's eyes filled with tears as she leaned in, her lips meeting his in a final, passionate kiss. "And I will come back to you, Francisco. I promise. Our love is stronger than any distance, any obstacle. We will find a way, together." As Mona boarded the plane, her heart ached with the weight of their goodbye, but it also soared with the promise of their future. She knew that the road ahead would be challenging, that there would be moments of doubt and fear, but she also knew that their love was a beacon, guiding them through the darkest of nights. And so, with a heart full of love and a spirit unbroken, Mona left Lisbon, carrying with her the memories of a love that had changed her forever. She knew that Francisco would be waiting, that their story was far from over, and that together they would write a future as beautiful and enduring as the city that had brought them together.